Good morning again. My name is Brianna Mussman. Some of you may know me as I grew up in this congregation, so I'm so happy to be back. It is good to see you if I know you. It is nice to meet you if I don't know you yet. So as you heard before, I work now for Children's Aid, a nonprofit in New York City, and I work as a health educator in a high school called Curtis High School in Staten Island, and I work with underserved teens, and I talk about reproductive health, sexuality, all of that good stuff in a school-based health center. So this year at TUS is an Our Whole Lives curriculum year for our middle school youth. For those of you who may not know, Our Whole Lives is a comprehensive sex education curriculum that was developed by the Unitarian Universalist Association, the UUA, and that was in conjunction with the United Church of Christ. And it's considered one of the most progressive and inclusive sexual health education curricula out there. So it's often shortened from Our Whole Lives to OWL. So just wanted to make sure everyone knew I wasn't talking about the reproduction of owls, the birds. That is, I'm sure, a different curriculum. So given that I grew up in this congregation, you may be thinking that I had a great OWL experience. But I have a confession. I never took OWL. I know. So my year, I was in the younger cohort of students set to take the class, and I was an additional year younger than any of my peers. So my parents decided it wasn't appropriate for me at the time, so I didn't take the class. In the end, the joke is on them, because I now talk about sex for a living at the dinner table, like to anyone willing to listen to me. So I turned out fine. So the UUA and even the UU Faith Action of New Jersey have made it a point to work on reproductive access, especially legislatively. We Unitarians are known for this, and OWL has been a curriculum known for breaking boundaries for years. It's apparently revolutionary that we as a religion prioritize learning about ourselves and our bodies. I wanted to share with y'all some of the experiences I have had working with young people and how I see that relating to our work as a congregation and the work we do for ourselves. So as Gretchen Haley said in our reading, bodies are funny, mysterious, beautiful, messy, and changing, as humans are funny, mysterious, beautiful, messy, and changing. And when I think about the young people I work with and how they view their bodies, one of those words really stands out to me, and that's mysterious. The assumption that people know things about their bodies and how they work is one I have learned not to take for granted. I have been asked so many questions that come down to asking how bodies work. Those inner workings, the things you can't see, are just so mysterious, especially when my students don't learn about it until their senior years of high school. So we've been discussing that the white stuff that comes out of a penis is semen, and semen has sperm, and that's how you get pregnant. Like, that patient had an epiphany. She was like, that makes so much sense. To discussing that someone will, in fact, be able to pee if they have a tampon in. And there's been a lot of whole confusion, so I couldn't resist bringing that up as a holy topic for today's sermon. So one particular time this stands out to me was with one of my high school students. So if you had just looked at her, this senior baggy sweatshirt, tips of her hair dyed blue, it would have been really hard to guess that she was pregnant again, if not for the pregnancy tests that had just come back positive. When she asked me, "But miss, how will I pee with an IUD in?" I found myself pointing to the poster on the wall going, this is where the IUD, the birth control, will go. That's where the baby is. And this is where you pee from. She scrunched her face up and was like, so there's 3 holes? I know, I've been asked this question multiple times before as a health educator, but I was still taken aback hearing it from her because she was 3 months pregnant and already had a 1-year-old at home and hadn't had the experience to understand her own body even through all that. So ignorance about this topic is rampant, regardless of who you are, where you're from, how old you are. Another student asked me, how do I use a tampon? And told me she'd asked her mom, but her mom had never used one and didn't know how. You might be tempted to think that this only happens with poor, minority, immigrant high schoolers in Staten Island, and that they're the only ones who need this education and this care. But I know that's not true, because I worked for 3 years before this with upper middle class, mostly white, college students at Brandeis University. So I taught workshops there, mostly about pleasure and technique, the literal ins and outs, if you will, of sex. Yeah, that's right. In the end, people still come back to those same basic questions. Is sex supposed to hurt? How am I supposed to use a tampon? How can I make sex feel good? And these are 20-something-year-old students in the highest levels of education, and you'd think they know these things about their bodies, but many still don't know. Bodies are funny, mysterious, beautiful, messy, and changing, as humans are funny, mysterious, beautiful, messy, and changing. Why do we stop there? The perception of sex and one's own body is formulated largely in childhood and young adulthood. It depends on what positive and negative experiences we've had, your religious influences, family pressure, shame, so much more. And one thing we often don't acknowledge is that humans change throughout life. There are so many other areas of our lives that we acknowledge that we grow in, and we seek out guidance and knowledge to help us navigate those changes. But where do we go to seek that knowledge about sex and our bodies? The UUA has suggested that the place to go is here, right here, in your spiritual home. As our reading earlier said, it can be a place of body, mind, spirit, all one, all connected, all alive, indivisible. It's so important to have science-based sex education that helps folks have agency over whether they conceive or not, to help protect themselves against infections. But sexuality education is so much more than that, especially in the hands of Unitarian Universalists. It's really important to also talk about pleasure and what sex really looks like, with relationships, feelings, consent, negotiation. It's important to acknowledge that the Me Too movement is the bigger context we're talking in right now. When we talk about these things, the percentage of people who've experienced sex as negative, bad, forced, non-consensual is high, at least 40%. And the UUA has been working on this long before the Me Too movement brought it to the forefront of public discourse. Recognizing that people bring their own experiences to the topics of sex and sexuality, and that their experiences are valid, is a cornerstone of what the UUA and I have been trying to do with regards to sex ed in the U.S. Most sex education curricula do not represent different people's experiences. There are the complexities of biology that we don't acknowledge for the many people who are intersex. There are the complexities of gender for people who don't fit neatly in the gender binary. We often ignore the differences in ability for those with developmental or physical disabilities. We rarely talk about race and the power dynamics and stereotypes that arise. Most curricula even ignore that any sex exists outside of one penis, one vagina makes one baby. These are things real people are dealing with every day, but they don't get the benefit of guidance or community around these issues. And I want to bring us back to the reading. Bodies change. For example, when I just mentioned sex with people of differing abilities, you might have said to yourself, that's not me. But we never know what's going to happen. It's the reality for many people. It could be our reality in the future as we age. But we don't talk about it. We don't teach about it. And as a result, people are lost because we don't have the space made or the people to talk to about it. Bodies are funny, mysterious, beautiful, messy, and changing, as humans are funny, mysterious, beautiful, messy, and changing. This isn't limited to young people. I really think many of you can attest, if you think about it, that sex is a never-ending learning curve. The way it looks in your 20s can be very different from how you experience it in your 30s, 40s, 60s, 80s. Sex itself is living and breathing, but why is our conversation about sex limited to young people and their experiences? I would love to have us work together to create this space here at TUS. Other congregations have made it a priority, but we haven't prioritized it here. Why haven't we? The first part of learning is being open to the possibility that you don't know something. It's vulnerable to admit that sex and sexuality can change over the lifespan, that we can gain knowledge, learn new techniques, have new experiences, have new limitations on our bodies. And for us not to be able to ask questions about them because they didn't happen in high school, we're expecting our growth is limited at that point. We as Unitarians acknowledge over and over that growth continues throughout the lifespan. I think we would be remiss if we didn't also acknowledge that our lived experiences can inform other parts of our lives, aside from our spiritual parts. Why not here, in church? It's your spiritual home. Our whole lives is about everything. Our whole lives. We often talk about other body parts, elbows, knees, find the time to talk about our arthritis pain, but we don't make spaces to talk about menopause, for instance, and what that actually feels like. Why do we allow ourselves to only talk about one part of aging and not another? If there's one thing I hope you've questioned during this sermon, I hope you've thought about sex as a normal part of the human experience and wondered why we don't make the spaces to treat it as such. I hope you've been so moved that you will consider joining us on April 22nd for a workshop Reverend Karen and I will be co-leading, at least to try it, see what it feels like to engage in these conversations for yourself, to take that leap of faith with your funny, mysterious, beautiful, messy, and changing body.